Check. 1, 2. Is this on even? All right, Brimstone fans, are you ready for this? Ooh, take it to the bridge. Hey there, Shadows of Brimstone fans. Aaron Lovejoy here from Miniature Monthly, and today we're assembling the Swamps of Death Small Enemy Sprue. Oh yeah, it's time to put those bad boys together and get our game on. So once again, I'm going to be showing you the bare minimum, super fast, how to put these things together. But then if you watch the rest of the video, you'll see how to put it together the way I put it together for the studio figures. All right, are you ready? Here we go. All right, so first up, we've got our tools. Let's discuss those. I've got my God hand clippers here. You could just use regular sprue cutters, but the God hand clippers are the best. Also, I've got a bunch of nice pokey things. These are my cutting implements, my cutting tools. If you're a little kid, do not use these by yourself. Have your parents help you. If you're an adult who's kind of clumsy like me, maybe get a friend to help you out. You don't want you cutting yourself. Be careful with sharp tools. All right, the first tool we're going to talk about is my X-Acto knife with the round tip blade. It is great for smoothing out or shaving off mold lines in curved surfaces. Same with my scalpel. It's very sharp, very useful tool. I also have a file. I use this all the time. This file is a really good shape. It's beveled on the top and a flat edge on the bottom. Really useful shape. And then lastly, I've got my regular X-Acto knife with the straight blade. All right, are you ready? Let's do this. All right, so we've got the new slasher, the new Hellbat. We've got tentacles and 3 hungry dead, and that comes on each sprue. I believe in the pack you get 3 of these sprues, so you get your full complement of enemies for everything. Let's take a closer look real quick. The level of detail on these guys is pretty freaking awesome. That's the new slasher. Oh, just gorgeous. It's the only multi-part kit. There's a couple multi-part kits. The Hellbat is multi-part. It's got wings and the body. The Slasher has 4 parts, 2 arms, and then the 2 halves of the body. The Hungry Dead are mostly single models. This one and this one are both just single piece models. This guy actually has a cape and then has an option for different arms. So that's kind of cool. So you can make them a little bit different. We've got the other 2 tentacles. If you got the City of Ancients pack, then you know that you got 2 other kind of tentacles. So that's right. We've got 4 different tentacle sculpts. Very, very cool things. You can mix and match them if you have both sets, and they will make a pretty good complement of variety of tentacles going on there. So here we'll look at a little bit more of this detail. This guy's super cool. You can see right through his body. That is just awesome. This girl, she looks kind of like the Saloon Girl, but gone zombie, and very, very cool. All right, so clipping off the models from the sprues, you're gonna want to get close to the model itself, but not right up next to it. You're gonna want to leave a little bit of that nub on the model itself. This way you don't tear the plastic. And things will look nice once you're done. I'm using the God hand clippers here, and well, they are super sharp, and so I can get a little bit closer to the model. It's actually pretty nice. You just got to be careful because the God hands have a tendency to break. I've already chipped the end off of my God hand, so just be kind of careful. On things like the Hellbat, just make sure you don't clip that tongue off. Just be careful. Take your time. All right, now once you're done, take a good look at your sprue. Look at all the parts. Make sure everything's been taken off of there before you throw it away. All right, so now we've got to clean the nubs off. So that little bit of plastic that was still left on there by the sprue, you got to just kind of go around and find all of them. Get them off the bottoms of the feet, because if you don't, it'll make it hard to glue it to the base. You also want to make sure you get the nubs that are in between parts off. Otherwise, those parts won't fit together well. So, do some test fits. Make sure that everything fits together good. Sometimes if the nubs are a little bit bigger, you can go back and clip them off, and then just kind of shave them flat. when I'm clipping nubs, I try to get similar pieces, you know, because you have multiples of each of these models, and clip them at the same time. That way you don't miss any of them when you're done. Yeah, just kind of work your way around the model or each piece. Get all those nubs off. It's not too hard, and it's totally worth. This step is totally worth it because it just makes everything look a lot nicer. All right, so you got the models off the sprue, you got the little nubs taken off, you're ready to go. Now you got to ask yourself a question. Do I just want to game with these? You know, are you just going to leave them in plastic, gray? Go ahead and do this next section. But if you want to do something a little bit better, you want to clean those mold lines, fill those gaps, do some cool stuff with the bases, don't do this section. Wait for the stuff at the end of this video. All right, for the gluing part of this, I'm using regular super glue, and I'm also using a product called InstaSet, which will help set that bond very quickly. And in cases like this, with the single part models, you know, I'm just gluing them on their bases. I like to use the InstaSet because it does an instantaneous bond, but it also makes the bond a little bit brittle. So like I like to put, you know, custom bases on after the fact, and so that allows me to break them off when I'm done. The tentacles, you're just going to put a liberal amount of glue on there, glue them to the base, and they're good to go. A little bit of InstaSet, and I'm done. For the Hellbats, I actually like the way they put the wings on. It's the whole top section of the body. And although this leaves a couple little of gaps up there, which I'm going to show you how to fix in a minute here, it makes for a much more strengthened support for those wings. I know the old Hellbats, they just had little pegs going in, and mine would fall out all the time. So this new way of getting those wings on, I think is much stronger, much better way of doing it. So super easy. Always do a little dry fit, make sure it works. But otherwise, you know, you can use a paper towel to wipe off any excess glue. Boom, 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 good to go. Now for the slasher here, he's a little bit more complicated. I put a little bit of glue on those tabs there. Always do a dry fit to make sure those tabs aren't too tight. Squeeze that thing together. I'm going to use a little bit of my paper towel to wipe off any excess glue, but otherwise pretty easy getting those two halves together. Do a little InstaSet to get that bond quick, and then it's just a matter of putting the arms on. I think you can put the arms on kind of in different positions if you want. But they do definitely click in at a certain point, and it's right there. So those things fit really well. This next one goes in like that, a little bit. You turn it a little bit forward, right there. So cool. Now the multi-part Hungry Dead guy, I usually put the figure on the base first. It just makes it easier to hold. A little bit of InstaSet gets that bond dried up there real quick, and then it's just a matter of putting his jacket on. You know, make sure that you got everything clean there so that there's nothing impeding you from getting your model together. But yeah, it goes together pretty easy. Now check this out. You can actually see the inside of his body through the coat. That's why they did it that way. I think that's freaking cool. Slasher, you can glue him to a base. I InstaSet that as well. Again, so I can break it back off. All right, we got your models all glued together and you're ready to game. But if you want to take it a few steps further, keep watching. All right, now mold lines are the little lines in between your model that where the plastic kind of escapes out of the two parts of the mold, and we need to get that off. So the first thing you're going to need to do is just start scraping those away, and I use the side of my my X-Acto knife, and I just kind of lightly scrape away at those mold lines. Now they are up and down these legs, the feet. Everywhere. You're going to want to kind of be careful that you don't take away too much detail, but you definitely want to get rid of that line because, well, quite frankly, It's bush league to leave it on there. No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot of people who leave their mold lines on. It really doesn't matter. But if you want your stuff to look a little bit nicer and not so much like it's plastic injected molded, you got to get these mold lines off. Be real careful around the faces, stuff like that. But just kind of work your way around each model. It's a little bit mind numbing, but I think you put a nice song on the radio and, just start scooting away. It's a little messy too, not going to lie. You're going to have plastic shavings all over the place, but totally worth it at the end. I also use my file. Files are a great way to get mold lines off, especially in areas like this on these tentacles. But just be real careful that you don't push too hard. You don't want to flatten out the tentacles, stuff like that. I also do little things like this, kind of running my knife around, like that little part in the Hellbat, his little curly Q tail, just kind of running my knife on the inside edge of that. It gets rid of the mold line on the inside edge of that tail. Just be diligent, get all those mold lines off, and you should be good to go. All right, the next step is another optional one. It's gap filling. And the product I use to fill my gaps is Aves Epoxy Sculpt. This is a 2-part epoxy putty with a property that I really like. It thins out with water. And so we're going to use that. We're going to use my sculpting tool here. This is it's got a little shovel on one end and a little knife on the other. That works out really well. And we'll probably be using a paintbrush in here to smooth out the putty a little bit later. So mix up. I usually mix up 2 little balls of putty like this. If you make little balls, you can kind of tell if they're the right size. That's approximately 50-50. It doesn't have to be exact. And you just mix it up. Once you get those colors or the putty an even color of, in my case, gray, I use the neutral color. We're ready to do this. All right, so just take your sculpting tool and kind of squeeze that putty into those gaps. These gaps are pretty small. They're not too bad. So it's going to take a little bit of work on your part. Just to I use kind of a shoveling motion to kind of get it squeezed in there. And you don't have to be super clean with this because you'll see here in a second how I smooth this out. This is a really nice part about this putty is it actually thins out with water. So you don't have to worry about getting it super smooth. Now see, I just wet my brush and I basically brush it smooth. Be careful. You don't want to push too hard with your brush because you'll actually take the putty back out. But you can get all these sections fairly smooth, fairly nice. Now on the Hellbat, there's some gaps on it. And once again, just kind of go in there, smush that putty in. I find that using a little bit more putty helps. You can put too much putty down and then scrape away the stuff you don't need. But that helps you just get it kind of smashed into that little gap. Then take your paintbrush, boom, 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 clean that up. Wow, that Hellbat is one piece. Now, the slasher is a little bit harder, maybe. There's the gap down in that little, there's like a little trough in his chitlin armor. And you can either fill that up completely or in... the intention here was that trough would stay in there. So I just kind of squeeze the putty down into the trough. Got to be a little bit creative, but you can get that putty down in there. Get the back there. I filled up all that. Super easy. I'm using different sides of my sculpting tool to kind of get into those areas. Now underneath, I filled this gap because, well, this was a studio model, but sometimes on gaming pieces, I usually don't fill the gaps on the bottom. But if you choose to do it, again, it's a little bit harder to get into this area. But if you work at it, maybe try using a couple different sculpting tools or a toothpick or something. It will help you get the putty into those gaps. As you see, I'm just kind of like coaxing that putty down into the gap. Again, not worried if it's a little bit rough because I can smooth it out with my paintbrush. I actually used my pin tool. I made that tool, by the way, with a sewing pin and an old paintbrush. So that's how I got that. All right, so you clean it all up with your with your paintbrush there. You want it wet, but you don't want it too wet, so just sort of damp. Smooth all that out. Use your tool to kind of get it even smoother. There we go. Perfect. I have this other weird shaped sculpting tool. I don't know what it's called, but it pays to have several different shapes of sculpting tools. So if you get a set with a bunch of different shapes, I mean, some of the shapes you just don't use, but other ones come in really handy for stuff like this. There we have it. I want to put a little sand around the edge of this base. I'm going to do that with some more of my Abe's epoxy sculpt. Squeezing it in around this outside portion of the base. I'm also making sure it gets real thin right at the outer edge. Now I'm not going to smooth it out too much because I want it to actually have a better sort of sand texture. I will kind of smooth it out up here. Maybe the sand comes up on this rock a little bit higher. So I'll put a little bit more right here. If I can ever get it to stick. Once it sticks, it's stuck. And once it dries, it ain't coming off. But sometimes getting it to stick is a little bit of a deal. Once we get all that on there, take some foam, some plug foam from a blister pack or one of your miniature cases. I'm just going to stamp it. And you can hit the same places multiple times. Sometimes it's better just bap, bap, bap. But that will give you the look of actual dirt in a 28mm scale. So I like this better than just pouring some of the gravel sand on there because it just looks better. And it looks like those rocks are in the dirt, which is pretty cool. All right, and for these hillbat spaces, I think I want to add a couple more rocks. So I'm going to use my epoxy sculpt here. We'll go, yeah, like this. So put a big one in the back, part of it. So one rock like that. Don't overthink rocks. They're just rocks, and you don't want them to get in the way of the models themselves. So put another rock right here, and maybe a tiny rock in front of it. I'll take a tool and kind of smash them down. Don't want them popping off. Just kind of get that general shape of my rock there. Oops. I'm going to leave this weird crease that was in there. I'm just going to leave that in. That. This putty is actually setting up pretty quick, so I can go ahead and put my stamp on. So I've got a rock here that has kind of a nice texture to it. Let's stamp that in. This will hopefully stick stuff down. Continually wet the rock. Some of your water from your wet palette. so that it doesn't stick. I'm going to run this around where that little crack was. I'm going to just add to it. Looks cool. This end over here and do the top again. There we go. I think that's pretty good. Sand, like we did on the tentacle. We should be good to go. Once again, I'm going to run this sand right up under, over the plastic, right up to the rock, right to the body. And voila, you've got your gaps filled, your mold lines shaved off. You even learned to sculpt some sand and some rocks, so you're ready to paint your minis. All right, I hope this video was helpful. Feel free to share it with your friends or anybody who needs to know how to get their Shadows of Brimstone models built. All right, until next time,